Hello and welcome into the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and I'm getting an update today from Erik Wetterling, also known as the Hedgeless Horseman. And we'll put a link down to the hedgelesshorseman.com below this so you can follow along with Erik's work. And Erik, we're kicking off the week with some news review in the junior mining sector. And the big news for the day is really that we finally have the initial mineral resource from Snowline Gold at its Valley Gold deposit. Snowline Gold is traded under the ticker SGD and on the US OTC under the ticker SNWGF. And they put out a resource that's over 7 million ounces of gold in all categories. And this puts at least a floor underneath the stock in the sense that you have now a known resource. That's been the big hit against Snowline, is that they've been putting out amazing drill results up in the Yukon, but nobody knew what they all added up to. So this at least is a snapshot in time, and it's still growing, but that's a pretty big resource to come out of the gate with just after a couple of seasons of drilling. So what do you make of the news from Snowline Gold today?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have, a firm number. It's like how many ounces do I think they're going to show in the resource? Because like you said, I mean, it's very much a snapshot view, but at least now they got that beta on paper, and who knows, maybe there's some people who, would not be comfortable buying in before a resource is out, for example. And the fact that they were able to do this from just 2 exploration seasons, really, I mean, it just shows how, if you find one of these, I mean, the growth pace is just absurd. I mean, think of how long it would take to drill up 7 million ounces of lode gold, for example. So I think this is it's like puts a floor. You know what you at least get. And of course, what I think that this is going to grow, as it says, I mean, there's plenty of areas where it's still wide open. Also, one interesting thing is the highest grades, they basically start at surface. So it's like we have no idea what the economics could be for this deposit yet. But one would think, I mean, it's not the operating costs or anything like that. That's the thing people might have a take on. I guess it's the remote location infrastructure. But from here on out, I mean, I expect this resource to keep growing just from Valley. And what's gonna require to happen for another quantum leap or something in terms of the valuation, that might be making another discovery, adding to it. But I think the base case is that this will simply keep on growing over the next years, of course, assuming they don't get bought out before that. And this is also one of those things that maybe all of a sudden there's more, let's say, boardrooms that feel more comfortable potentially acquiring Snowline or at least a Valley deposit. So I think this is interesting from a lot of angles, and not necessarily that the resource in itself is some kind of shock. I just simply think it puts in a floor, kind of unlock some other threats like potential M&A. And yeah, again, people are at least going to have that comfort that, okay, if they like gold, they at least see now that, I get 7 million ounces on paper, which is a huge resource at very good grades, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, when you think about it, this is one of the largest resources I've seen come out in the gold space in such a short amount of time, because we were referencing some other multi-million ounce deposits before we started recording today, and it took them a lot longer with a lot more drilling to even get up to 1 million or 2 million or 3 million. And some of the most famous resources took a lot of drilling to get what amounted to a much smaller resource. Now, yes, this is a little more remote in the Yukon, but that's a substantial resource to come out of the gates with. The market seems to like it. It's in the green today, so it didn't get hit in a sell-off. So it seems like most people like the resource size. But as far as the backstopping the valuation they currently have, do you think that backstops the, let's call it $865 million Canadian market cap for Snowline? How do you think they could double it from there? Would it be hitting on other targets and showing that they have, something like Jupiter or other projects that could also complement this project? Or what do you think moves the needle now for Snowline, having put out such a big resource, but also still having a lot of drilling underway?
I mean, that's, of course, pure guesswork, because we don't know what's going to happen if gold sentiment really gets going. I mean, then people can see, look at Snowline and say, oh, well, here I'm getting one of the largest gold resources in the space, basically. It's still sub $1 billion, and we've seen some other deals being made over $1 billion for actually less ounces. So I don't know exactly what the market really wants to see. I mean, some kind of economic study would be, I guess, the next de-risking step to just show how potentially very profitable a mine here could be. But then again, this is probably going to grow, so who knows when they feel comfortable putting out a PA, because obviously every kind of study, resource or PA, it's going to act as some kind of anchor. And what's going to be required for it to have again, like a potential quantum leap? I do think it might be, either a new discovery or get this, let's say, about 10 million ounces or something. Just to have it come out as like by far, let's say, the best project around. It's like somebody for sure needs to buy this. And when you have that, real scale potential, and showing that it's basically not a one-off, because that's, I think, what people might be debating right now, because this is, impressively high grade for a reduced intrusion related gold system. So the question is Valley special? I mean, it is special, but it's like, is it a one-off in this district? I mean, they have a bunch of reduced intrusion targets. So that might be a big thing, actually, that they make kind of a new discovery, and then all of a sudden the narrative might be like, hey, is this another valley? Are they going to get, 20 million ounces one day and stuff like that? That's when I think people might be very comfortable, let's say, paying up. And of course, maybe there's maybe M&A, or maybe B2 puts in, money again and all that. So I think, I don't know exactly what's actually going to be required, because it's also some kind of drag in a sense that you have this high market cap, because everything is not in absolute terms. I mean, some look at 10 million market cap company and says, well, that's cheap just because it's at 10 million. And some look at Snowline like, well, that's expensive. It has a market cap of 800-900 million. But I can see some stuff changing that, but I'm not 100% sure exactly what would, because in that case, I would need to know exactly what the market is thinking right now.
All right. Well, I think it's still positive news for the sector to kick off this week. Way to go to the Snowline team and Scott. And that's an impressive maiden resource to come out with on their Valley deposit. So we'll keep following along with Snowline. And I know Corey does have them on the show quite often from updates, so I'm sure we'll be updating listeners on this news. Let's also take a look at another company we've talked about before, Erik, on the show. And we've also had Taj and Adam on the show, and that's First Nordic. It's traded on the TSXV under the ticker FNM. They've had a couple of news blasts out recently about, identifying some anomalies on the Storjuktan project, but they've also just updated the market on their Paubäcken project when they did a geochemical survey and they did some base of till and bedrock sampling. I'm impressed with the price action and the strength in the stock. What do you think is driving it? Are any of these individual things, these news releases they put out, the drivers here, or is it just the overall size of this project, the length of this trend, about 100 kilometers that they own 100%? Is that what's driving it, or is it the Barsele project getting drilled by Agnico Eagle? Where do you think the interest and the action is coming from in First Nordic?
I mean, I think the word is kind of getting out there. I mean, Taj, given his success at Discovery Silver, I think he has a following. The company's been very active on, doing interviews and all that, visiting conferences. And I mean, it started off as probably one of the most sleepy stories around. I mean, Barsele, the predecessor, one of the merging companies, that didn't really change in terms of fundamentals, really, but the stock price went down from the peak. I don't know how much it went down, but went down a lot. I mean, it once traded at like 200 million. I think it went down to maybe 24 million. Again, without a big change, really. So I just think it became absurdly cheap, because Agnico has never put out a PEA. Last few years, Agnico hasn't done much except for like maintenance drilling and keep the claims in good standing. And then you had kind of similar story with Goldline, went out the gate in a pretty good way. I mean, they did a blind discovery at Paubäcken, which got the market excited. I think it reached a market cap of like 70 million. And then these entities merged, which had, reached peak market caps combined of 270 million. And the combined entity was trading at, I don't know how low it went, like 37 million. No, actually less than that, I think. So I just think it started out at an absurdly low level. I think the word is getting out. And now First Nordic is showing here that, okay, well, not only do they own 45% of the Barsele deposit, which I think, the market has been sleeping on for years and potentially, for somewhat good reasons. But still, I mean, if they reach those market caps way back at much lower gold prices before the Barsele project got a designation to be of national interest, and now we have the obvious synergies, and it's like what's happening right now in addition to everything I've said, word getting out, well, they outlined the Storjuktan like a 5-kilometer long geochemical anomaly. I mean, that's a huge footprint. 5 kilometers is very large. That's larger than the Barsele footprint, for example, which I think could go to, at the end of the day, 3 to 5 million ounces, at least 3 easily, I think. And then they showed that, hey, at Paubäcken, there's also, at least 2 multi-kilometer anomalies. So, and that's 100% owned. And they reprice some warrants, because I've seen a lot of people ask, like, they're going to need to raise money. It's like that's the first thing some, let's say, newcomers to the story, they ask about the cash position, because it's not like they have a lot of cash. But the stock has done well. And then they're repricing some warrants. So I think there's like $4 to $5 million of warrants in the money. And exploration is very cheap in Sweden. And they hope to drill like 10,000 meters over at Paubäcken, the 100% owned ground. So now it opens up the possibility of, hey, they might do a 10,000 meter drill program if they get the, money in from the warrants. And in that case, now theoretically, they wouldn't need at least to raise money for the next, 6 to 12 months, let's say. So that could be a lot of catalyst all of a sudden without the need for a private placement. Not saying they're not going to raise money, but potentially no need. And I think that might also get some people scrambling. There's like people were expecting, they need to raise. I can chill out and just wait for the private placement, and then I'm going to get a position at these prices if they think it's cheap, which I do. But now it's like, whoa, maybe they actually are not going to do a private placement. And what's going to happen with the price after, they put out more news? What if Agnico hits? What if the Paubäcken is a significant discovery and all that? So I think it kind of might have created also some sort of a shock in a sense. There's like everybody was expecting that there was going to be a private placement at any point in time. And now they're showing the potential that they might also be able to use the warrant money to actually de-risk. And if there's no private placement before that, then it's like, how chill can you be?
Yeah, I think it's actually a really smart strategy to have repriced those warrants and possibly bring in money through that doorway. And then, like you say, it'll leave investors that were expecting to get in on a private placement scrambling to buy in the open market. And maybe that's where some of the buying's coming from. They do have the drilling ongoing by Agnico Eagle at the Barsele deposit. And then they also have all of this other land that they're doing exploration work on. And so there's a lot of potential there in Sweden to keep pushing the envelope. We'll keep following along with the story. And then there's kind of one wild card story for the day that we were talking about, and we're not really sure all the details yet, but it's worth at least reviewing, and that is Nordic Metals. It's traded on the TSXV under the ticker RAMP. It's currently halted, but the company came out with some news that they've made a new high-grade gold discovery at their Rottenstone Southwest project. Now, this is a project that most people are looking at the nickel. It adjoins Fathom Nickel's Rottenstone claims, and so it's being dubbed as a battery metals company. And yet the drill result they just put out and announced to the market this morning is 73.55 grams per ton gold over 7.5 meters. So that's like a 551 gram per meter hit. What do you make of that, Erik? A massive bonanza grade gold hit at a nickel project.
Yeah, I mean, quite a shock, because exactly as you say, it's like I've been watching Ramp Metals because I'm in Fathom Nickel, and these guys basically staked, I'm not going to say extension, but it's like they have their ground is immediately neighboring Fathom, who are looking for nickel around the old Rottenstone mine. And these guys, is like what got me interested is like they have, I think it was the founder of Sirius Resources that made the Nova Bollinger $1 billion discovery. So they had a big gun like that, as I think he's a technical advisor. So it's like, okay, if he bothers with it, I don't see him at, on a lot of boards, but to be honest, I haven't looked that hard either. But okay, to just have a big gun like that, and I think that when I looked at it, the market cap was sub 10 million. So it's like, hey, okay, he probably thinks they have a shot of finding something there. And we know there's been some very, very impressive high, PGM nickel grades up at Rottenstone. So that's why I put it on my map. That's why I bought a small position a few months ago. But then we get this gold hit. And it's like I have to dig into it myself a bit better because, again, this came out of left field. I didn't even know they were drilling for gold because I assumed that this was a gold target. Otherwise, it would be maybe too serendipitous that they're looking for nickel and then they find a drill of 500 gram meter intercept. But it's like, anytime you just do some, let's say, really like wildcatting. Yeah, I'm assuming this is kind of blind drilling. I'm assuming these are the first holes into that target. I'll have to, confirm that that's the case because if there's been, historic drilling, it's not anywhere near as impressive, I would say. But if these guys just drill one hole, basically the first hole, and they hit results like this, I mean, then I have to dig in because you don't see hits like that every day, and especially it's not like it's a super high market cap already. So it's like, what are the odds that this is actually going to turn out to be a economic high-grade gold discovery that's going to become a mine? I have no idea. But even if that's like 5% or something, it might be really cheap here. So it's like I'm looking to maybe, take a bit of a extra stab at it and then do some more due diligence.
Yeah, I mean, right now, Ramp Metals is less than a 5 million Canadian market cap company. So a hit like that's got to be worth something. So we'll see what happens. It's probably going to have a nice vault up when it opens up based on that news, but it'll be interesting to get more information on it and follow along with the story. I'm sure there'll be a lot more eyeballs on it after this news release today. So this has been kind of a fun way to kick off this week. I mean, there's been action in a couple of stocks you're following, Erik, and always appreciate you coming on the KE report just to give us your hot take on it and bring some of these to our attention and to the listeners' attention. So if people like getting Erik's thoughts and want to follow along with the different companies that he covers and a lot of the different field of exploration companies that he's tracking the news on, definitely click on the link below. It takes you over to the hedgelesshorseman.com. And Erik, thanks for coming on the show and looking forward to our next conversation.
Thank you, Shad. And consider me biased. I own shares of all companies mentioned. And First Nordic is a banner sponsor.